This is not breaking news. This is not a scandal. This is not about one country or one protest or one decision made last week. This is about a system that was designed to feel invisible, so stable you were never meant to notice it, so reliable it could be taken for granted, until it wasn't. For years, this system promised insulation from shocks, from pressure, from the chaos everyone else had to absorb. And quietly, without drama, it did the opposite. It concentrated risk. It rewarded fragility. It tied stability to forces that cannot be controlled. You don't see it yet in headlines. You feel it in delays, in hesitation, in costs that no longer behave the way they used to. If you're still watching, stay with me, because once you see how this system actually works, you can't unsee where it's going. And that direction matters, especially now. What actually controls this system now is not policy, not speeches. Not even governments. It's dependency. A dependency so deep it reshaped decisions before they were ever debated. A dependency built quietly, transaction by transaction, barrel by barrel. For years, the assumption was simple. Oil is a commodity. It can always be replaced. If one source falters, another fills the gap. That assumption is no longer true because this system is no longer flexible. It is specialized, locked in, engineered around specific flows, specific routes, specific risks. Refineries tuned to certain grades, supply chains designed for discounted barrels, financing structures tied to deliveries that cannot be missed. What looks like diversification on paper is, in reality, concentration. Multiple suppliers, all vulnerable in the same way. And that is the shift. Control has moved away from markets and toward instability itself, which means when pressure builds in one place, it doesn't stay there. It travels. And the first signs of that movement are already visible. The most dangerous change didn't arrive with a crisis. It arrived quietly, and then it stayed. There was a time when risk was treated as temporary, a disruption here, a sanction there, something to wait out. Before, instability was the exception. Now it is baked in. What changed was not the scale of dependence. It was the tolerance for fragility. Delays became normal. Workarounds became routine. Emergency measures became policy. Slowly, the system adapted to stress instead of removing it. Refineries learned to accept uncertainty. Shipping learned to move through gray zones. Financing learned to assume disruption would happen. And that normalization is the trap. Because systems that adjust to instability stop warning you when they're close to failure. They don't break loudly. They thin, they stretch, they absorb. Until one day, what used to be a buffer becomes a fault line. And when pressure hits that line, it doesn't announce itself as a crisis. It just starts to move. Then the shock arrives, not as a collapse, as a disturbance. Streets fill, currency slides, work stops in places where work cannot stop. What matters here is not the unrest itself, it's where it lands. Oil does not move on ideology. It moves on coordination, on schedules, on confidence. And confidence is the first thing to disappear. When protests spread, crews hesitate. When inflation spikes, logistics slow. When security forces flood the streets, labor quietly pulls back. This is how supply begins to wobble, not with explosions, with questions. Will this shipment leave on time? Will the port stay open tomorrow? Will insurers still cover the voyage? Every delay adds cost. Every flare-up adds doubt. And doubt is poison to a system built on precision. This moment is treated as temporary, manageable, a headline that will pass. But the system doesn't need collapse to fail. It only needs hesitation. Here is how the system actually works. Cheap oil is never just cheap oil. It comes with conditions, invisible ones. The price discount is absorbed up front. The risk is deferred, pushed downstream. Refineries are redesigned to handle specific grades. Financing is tied to uninterrupted delivery. Shipping routes grow narrower, not broader. On one side, producers gain a lifeline: cash, markets, political cover. On the other, the buyer absorbs volatility, labor unrest, sanctions, currency collapse, geopolitical pressure. The benefit is immediate. The damage is cumulative. Every time instability rises, the system compensates by working harder, by paying more, by stretching thinner. And because the oil is cheaper, the system convinces itself it can afford the stress. That illusion holds right up until multiple stress points activate at once. Because when instability synchronizes, there is no buffer large enough. And the cost stops being financial. It becomes structural. Then the pressure speeds up. Shipments slow, then reroute, then disappear from schedules altogether. Refineries wait, they adjust, they run suboptimally, margins vanish, inventory stops lining up with machinery. Every fix creates a new problem. Heavy crude arrives late, or not at all. Lighter barrels cost more and don't quite fit. Production dips, just slightly, enough to matter. Loans tied to oil stall when barrels don't arrive. Projects freeze, influence erodes, nothing collapses at once. That's the danger. The system stays upright while losing efficiency every day. Costs rise quietly. Confidence drains invisibly. And all of this happens faster than planning cycles can adapt, before contracts can be rewritten, before alternatives can be secured. At this stage, the system isn't breaking. It's accelerating toward a threshold it cannot see. And once it crosses that line, there is no gradual way back. This is where it reaches you. Not as a headline, not as a geopolitical briefing. As friction, fuel costs edge up. Not enough to panic, enough to notice. Transport takes longer. Schedules slip. Margins tighten in places you never see. Factories adjust quietly. Overtime disappears. Hiring pauses. Maintenance gets delayed. Nothing dramatic, nothing that triggers alarms. But the system is asking you to absorb what it can no longer carry. If you rely on prices staying predictable, on supply arriving when it's supposed to, on growth targets that assume smooth energy flows, this is where that assumption starts to fail. You're told this is temporary, that markets will adjust, that resilience is built in. Stay with me. Because what's happening now is not the shock, it's the handoff. And once the burden moves from the system to the people inside it, it does not move back easily. At this point, it stops being contained. Because energy systems don't fail locally, they transmit. When one buyer scrambles, prices shift elsewhere. When one route tightens, shipping lanes crowd. When insurance pulls back in one region, premiums rise across all of them. What was once discounted oil now competes on the open market. Quietly, aggressively. Other countries feel it first. Importers with fewer reserves, industries with thinner margins. Then producers adjust. They redirect flows. They renegotiate contracts. They choose reliability over loyalty. And suddenly, leverage moves. What looked like a bilateral problem reveals itself as a network problem. Interconnected, sensitive, fast. No single decision causes this. No single actor controls it. Which makes it harder to stop. Because when uncertainty spreads across borders, it feeds on itself. Each reaction becomes the next trigger. Each adjustment narrows the margin for error. And the system enters a phase where stability depends on everyone believing it still exists. From here, there are three paths. None of them are clean. All of them carry cost. The first is adjustment. Pay more, spread risk, rebuild supply chains around reliability instead of discounts. It works, but slowly. And it requires admitting that the old system failed. The second is erosion. The system holds together, but weaker each year. Higher costs become permanent. Efficiency never fully returns. Growth targets are missed, then quietly lowered. Nothing breaks. Everything underperforms. And then there is rupture. Not planned, not gradual. One decision, one escalation. One shipment stopped at the wrong moment. And suddenly the system discovers how little slack it actually has. None of these paths announce themselves in advance. They overlap, they blur. What looks like adjustment can slide into erosion. What feels manageable can harden into fragility. The future doesn't hinge on intention. It hinges on timing. And timing is the one variable this system can no longer control. What makes this dangerous is not that anyone lost control. It's that the system was never designed to stop itself. It rewards delay. It smooths over warning signs. It teaches everyone inside it to keep moving, even when the ground is shifting. Nothing here resolves cleanly. There is no reset button, no announcement that the risk has passed. The system will keep functioning, right up until it doesn't. And when that moment comes, it won't look like a crisis at first. It will look like confusion, like miscalculation, like decisions made a little too late. If you're watching this, don't look for comfort. Look for patterns. Look for what's being normalized. Look for what's being priced as temporary, because this story isn't finished. It's moving. And in the next phase, the question won't be who caused it. It will be who saw it early enough to adapt. If you want to keep following where this system leads next, stay here. Keep watching, because the most important part of this story hasn't surfaced yet.